Howdy!
Hello.
With us on This Week in BS, BS is bad science, or you can think of it as the other word, bullshit. Yeah, it's play on words there. We have Peasy Myers with us. How are you today, Peasy?
Oh, I'm doing fine. Lazy Sunday afternoon, so it's all good.
You know, I do like lazy Sunday afternoons. Yeah. So okay, so originally we were going to talk misrepresentation of science in the media, but my sinus my science journalist had a family emergency. And so Peasy was going to weigh on the, representation of science in the media. We got a science journalist and me. So we're just like, hey, let's just talk about misconceptions of science in general. And I'm like, that's a great idea, Peasy. So.
Oh, okay, I guess that was my idea. That works.
That was your idea. Somebody said easy peasy.
Uh-huh.
That was Joel over on Periscope. So we are streaming on Periscope, YouTube, DLive, and Twitch and Facebook. So we're streaming to all those platforms. So it's like spread out, trying to get the good news.
I'm feeling like I've been blown apart and split all over the internet. Okay.
Well, there are people who think quantum is magic. I guess we could probably start a bit with like that.
That's a misconception, all right. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts about the magical, mystical quantum mechanics?
That the phenomena they're often describing as being so amazing and mysterious don't operate on the scale of macroorganisms like us. So it's all kind of irrelevant.
Yeah. They don't understand things like quantum confinement. Once you get to like quantum confinement, you can get atoms to do things that they wouldn't normally do in their bulk form.
Right. And it's really a more fundamental misconception is this idea that you can manipulate the universe with your mind. And somehow quantum physics explains how you can do that when it doesn't. But okay, that's what they want to think. So wishful thinking is behind a lot of misconceptions, I'm afraid.
So are you telling me the force is not real?
Uh-oh.
The Star Wars force is not real.
I don't want to get a lot of hate mail here, but yeah, it's not real. Sorry.
I can feel people trying to chokehold us now. Vader grip.
I would also say that movies are kind of a mixed bag. Some good stuff, some bad stuff. Yeah, we're in trouble now.
Oh gosh, I'm so scared of all the Vader wannabes.
Yeah.
Gonna go out there. So it's and they say spooky quantum. Okay, now on the quantum level, particles act weird. They do, but we can explain things associated to why they behave that way. Now there's spooky behavior, but it's not like it's magic. It's like we observe certain things that happen that we don't see, as you said, in the macro world. I mean, we don't see particles phasing in and out, like as people. I mean, how about we get into why is it that we don't see quantum behavior on a macro level as opposed to the quantum level?
Well, I'm not a physicist.
That's okay. There's a bit of chemistry too. So.
Okay. So the way I would explain it, what satisfies me is that we're looking at the statistical properties of very small things. And people are made up of a tremendous number of very small things. And they all kind of average out that what we're doing is we're seeing the stochastic result of the behavior of a lot of maybe some elements of it are mystifying and spooky, but they sum up to mundane effects that we see in the macro world.
Well, that's fair. That's a good, explanation.
For a
Sometimes,
biologist, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
I like it. I like one thing that I talk about particularly because I used to work in nanoparticle technology, and so we would get into plasma and resonance. You would get in once you get to a particular element, when you're getting to like atom height on singular, like a few atoms together, it behaves a lot differently than if you had a big old block of it. Like carbon acts completely differently on just a single atomic level than how it would if it was in a bulk mass.
Yeah.
Because you're able to manipulate those electrons a little bit better on the single atom versus it all being together in a giant brick of solid form. Um, and you also have quantum confinement to where you can kind of shrink the space allowed with these particular atoms, and then they behave a bit differently because you're limiting their space. So it's you can do things with these different subatomic particles that you couldn't do if they're all caught up with, being in a larger bulk, form like carbon or silver or gold or something like that. You can play with the electrons a lot more if they're in smaller, teeny tiny little pieces and get them to do all kinds of things. So, but I don't know. That's how I go about doing it.
Uh-huh.
And we don't see all those little intricate interactions like that when they're all in this giant bulk form.
Yes. Yeah. and I mainly work with giant bulk things, so
That's okay.
where giant bulk things is single cells. And there are even quantum effects don't really matter very well, at least not detectably, they don't matter much.
Right, with the larger things.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had some other questions. Let's see. Let's pull up
Oh,
something.
can I bring one up?
Sure, absolutely.
I would just like to mention to everybody that today is the 10th anniversary of the retraction of Andrew Wakefield's phony paper that set up the anti-vax panic. So I think that's kind of a significant thing.
That is a significant thing.
Yeah. Tell your friendly anti-vaxxers, if there are such things, that know that the whole thing was determined to be bad science and the journal retracted it.
See, I think that makes me so nuts when I encounter people who are was like, well, this paper, this one time, this one person did. I'm like, it was retracted. We have had to have so many other researchers go and definitively show that vaccines do not cause autism for what, almost 20 years now? Almost 20 years they've had to go through and undo the damage that one paper did.
Yes. And, this kind of stuff, another example is I recently wrote a post about these Chinese paper mills that are, they just churn out paper after paper using formulaic text, and they will reuse photographs of data to make it look like this is all authentic stuff. And a large number of them are reinforcing ideas about traditional Chinese medicine.
Oh, God.
So, yes. Yes. So, you get people who come to you and say, well, TCM has been published in peer-reviewed journals, and it's tainted by all of these really bad papers that are just churned out by paper mills. And so I don't trust anything about acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine, qi, and all that other stuff that they make up. It's
frustrating. Are you familiar with, I believe it's Elizabeth Bick and her work with
Oh, yes.
PubPeer?
Yes.
God, I love that website.
Uh-huh.
I find it's a very useful website, particularly if you have new people who are unfamiliar with how to read a scientific paper and what it is, as you're going through. It's like, what is it that other individuals in the field are looking for to see if this is crap or not? fantastic. I follow her on Twitter, and she even posts pictures, and she's like, okay, this is advanced level. Can you tell what's wrong with this particular image? They're like, it's copied from this image over here. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, you see these pictures of gels with these little blobs, and no two blobs in a real gel look alike, okay? But you can tell when somebody's cut out this little bar and put it over here, and this one over here. And, yeah, Elizabeth Bick she was one of the sources I cited in my write-up of that Chinese paper mill stuff. So yeah, she's a good one to read.
She's awesome. I really like, her. I like going through and trying to keep my mind fresh on, the Western blots and all that going through. Like, oh, okay. When I worked for industry, there was one particular place that I worked for. And when I first started, I learned very quickly, I probably don't need to be in industry, because when I was going through and generating antigens, and we'd go through and start running our gels to show that it was this is the molecular weight that we're looking for. And we have, binding with the Western blots here. And then I would go and run my gel or my SDS and be like, there are more bands here than Woodstock, and you're saying this is 99% pure. I'm like, you guys know this is filthy, right? You know this is a dirty protein.
Right. Yeah.
They're like, you're too honest to be working here.
Right. So Vic also recently wrote up another thing. I just was discussing the whole Jonathan Pruitt story, which is looking like a really big catastrophe coming down the pike. So Pruitt is a behavioral psychologist who had a lot of collaborations all across the country with multiple people. He was researching behavior in social spiders, and he was getting all this data, and he'd share it out freely, which is great. That's what scientists should do, is share data freely. Yeah. Only it turns out that one of the people who published some of his work, it's a collaboration, went through the numbers and discovered these massive blocks of data that were just copied from one place in a spreadsheet to another place in a spreadsheet. And she had to retract her paper because she couldn't trust the source data behind it, which is commendable. That's the ethical response to make.
Yes.
But it means that there's a whole bunch of papers out there floating around in this behavioral sociology, psychology sorts of things that you can't trust anymore because this one guy. And
oh God.
Yeah.
Nate Brody just sent us a super chat for $2. Love the show. Thank you, Nate. Don't forget, you're going to be on this month with Dr. Leah Torres about abortion law and all that. What's coming up? Yeah. Dr. Torres has been on before. And it was really great because she's getting a lot of questions about what does she tell her patients about Roe v. Wade. And Nate is a former law professor. And so it's really good discussion. It's very, we got scary stuff ahead. So please do check that out later on in the month. Thanks, Nate.
Yeah. Everything ahead of us right now is scary. Yeah. Let's not talk about it.
Yes, let's not talk about that. So, okay. How about another question? Because I posted all of this out. We've got, I think Zervis on my particular Discord asked, 5G is for population control. The 5G network. They're all worried that this extra G is going to, and on our phones to make our phones go faster is going to.
Our bodies can handle 4Gs, but 5 is beyond what man can manage. Yes, okay.
Yeah. I don't think there's going to be any signaling that's going to come into our brains to make us mindless drones.
The energies are just so low that even with 5G, it's not gonna affect us, in any kind of way. Except maybe faster cell phone service, but okay. Otherwise, no. years ago, Minnesota went through this whole big deal with the power line wars.
Yeah.
Where
Oh, yeah, I remember a lot of that.
yeah, where they're stringing high tension wires across the state to bring power to rural areas and from rural areas to the big cities and so forth. Um, and if I just drive out a few miles, I can see these hulking, giant, monstrous girder-like things all over
Yeah.
the landscape. And they're all covered with these gigantic wires. And the thing is, people were so scared about this that they were going out and dynamiting the towers and stuff like that. And there we're dealing with much higher voltages than
Right.
anything a cell phone is going to come out with. And I'm sorry, even the high tension wires don't do anything unless maybe you get right under the wires, right
Yeah.
at the climb up or something. But
Yeah.
nope. And the cell phone controversy is the same thing, except now we're dealing with signals that are orders of magnitude weaker.
Yeah, I mean, there's some, some people like a lot of the things with the ghost hunter stuff, and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm getting these like, sensations and stuff." Turn out they had just a lot of heavy electronic equipment all isolated in a single area. You can have a reaction to high levels of electromagnetism in that regard, but it's like, once you leave, it's fine. But it can do some things for some people that are particularly sensitive. But as far as I know, there's no permanent effect.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the effects on some people are just psychosomatic. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But maybe one of the advantages of 5G is that it will eradicate ghosts.
Wow.
We should mention more.
We should see if that's going to be the case. Somebody said 5G is going to mess up astronomy in the side chat. Let me see really quick. I hadn't heard that. So is that technology supposed to mess up? I don't know how that would. I'm not finding anything. Will 5G cellular technology affect radio astronomy? Oh, that's the question. Yeah, I don't know that that's a thing. I can't find like a SpaceX Starlink satellites may mess with astronomy. Well, that's
Yeah, that's different. That's
different.
Yeah. Well, hey, bring on a radio astronomer. Have them play.
Yeah, I need to bring on one of those. I'm just gonna have to go get my old school Rolodex and just start flipping through, radio astronomer, I'm old enough to remember those on people's desks, like giant Rolodex of business cards, and they just kind of scroll through. And I'm
old enough to have had one.
I've never had one because I was a kid when I saw those, or even the carbon copy, the running off the sheets. You go make runoffs, and so when I was like really little, they didn't have nobody could afford a copy machine. They would just do the carbon copy, the runoffs. I got to go run off some things because it was literally like a giant circle that they would it would copy, and you had it was just
mimeographs.
Mimeographs, yes.
Yeah. No, I remember those and carbon copies, and
mimeographs.
Yes, when I learned typing, we learned how to you use carbon paper, so you'd have multiple copies of your correspondence. Oh man, you are trying to make me feel really old now, aren't you?
I'm a Gen Xer, so it's like I grew up in a really weird time. I've seen every single video game console ever created, and I have an original Commodore 64 that I used with a tape drive. So
okay, and I'm a boomer. Everything is my fault.
I don't think everything is your fault.
I accept it. Yeah.
Some other boomers might be problematic. Not all boomers. Hashtag not all boomers. Oh my goodness. All right, here's one for you. This comes from Sash. She wants to talk about sex characteristics and gender identity are determined solely by chromosomal makeup. So, and she sent me, Scientific American has posted a lot of different things about that, about the conversations on how sex is determined, you know, as far as that everybody focuses just on X, Y, and XX, but they don't know that there's a whole bunch of variation there that's completely ignored. So.
Right. Yeah. That, you know, the thing is, there are so many different levels where all of this operates that you can't really just you can't ascribe it to one thing.
No.
Chromosomes are one factor, sure, but for instance, there's a syndrome called De La Chapelle syndrome, which is where the SRY gets translocated to another chromosome, like even the X chromosome. So you can have individuals who are chromosomally XX, but they
develop as male.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's the chromosome level, there's the gene level, there's the hormone level. I would say that the psychological level is just as valid. All of these things are contributing to sexual identity.
Right.
And you can have this confusing mix and match where one level is saying, yeah, you're male, and another level is saying you're female, another level is saying you're male, and back and forth that way. And it's just these bewildering collection of signals that determine who your sexual identity is. And it's a mistake to just say, well, there's only two types, because no, even just looking at a gross level, at chromosomes and genes and hormones, there's a combinatorial scheme in place that means you can have all kinds of different kinds of sexual identities.
You absolutely can. Thank you, Hannah Anderson. $25 super chat. Love you, Mel. Keep up the great work. I'm trying. Thank you for that. I've avoided getting into internet arguments with people about this because it's just, some people make videos and like, you should do a response video. I'm like, yeah, no, I shouldn't. I should just put out what the correct information is rather than saying this person got it all wrong because of blah, 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 blah. And then you start an internet war. And I'm like, just nobody's got time for that. So just put out the correct information and say, I see.
And you also have to have these arguments with people who are dogmatically dedicated to the most simplistic ideas. You know, there are only two sexes, they say. And they know nothing about the scientific literature. They don't know that Nature and Science and Scientific American and all these things have put out these papers that refute that whole claim. It's because there's this cultural tradition of just saying there's only two possible types. And we gotta have the strong warrior men, and we gotta have the subservient females. And
goodness.
They don't want to think beyond that. And
I think it's also funny. I encounter science people who are like, there's only two biological sexes. There's a male and there's a female. Like, well, you have two ends of the spectrum, but then you got everything else in the middle. And so it's like, but then they're like, but that's not the normal people. The normies are over here. And you're like, but these are all the diseased folks that are just messed up. And I'm like, why are you?
Yeah, and we, the science educator, we kind of contribute to this too. So I'm teaching genetics right now, and I got my students doing these crosses. And the first thing I tell them is that you have to pull out the males and the females and breed them together, right?
Right.
And it perpetuates this idea that those are the only types, because In the context of a genetic cross,
Mhm.
all that matters are fertile males and females. And that's all you're working with, and you're not worrying about nuances at all. You know, it's not as if we look carefully at the males and we scrutinize how good their dancing abilities are in the courtship rituals. And and so you get this idea that there's just these two functional units. And yet when you look at the real world, you know, when you can look at flies and you can see all these variations of behavior, but you look at humans, and humans fulfill so many different roles. We don't spend most of our life just dedicated to breeding.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of other things that we need to support our culture. And you can be valid and useful and important to society without fulfilling a traditional sex role and having the appropriate number of babies.
Yeah.
That way.
I mean, you look at different animals in the animal kingdom. There's practices of altruism. You have all of these other types of roles. You'll have like a bird will go and take care of another group's bird, you know, and it's or babies, and it's just you see a lot of this need to kind of fill a niche,
Yeah.
fill a role, and humans do the same thing. We have to fill a niche and fill a role, and often it has nothing to do with having babies of your own, just taking care of everybody else. Speaking of which, this made me mad. I'm part of a Facebook anti-vaxxer group because I just want to see what they're thinking. I don't post or engage. I'm like, I just want to see what's
you're a mole.
I like there's 33, I think it's 33,000 people are part of this group. And they recently posted this meme or something that said, I'm worried about my children. Why do I have to take care of the herd? And I'm like, you're just it's getting to where it's an extremely selfish thing, and they don't care about anybody else at all in any capacity. I'm like, you're going to be very lonely, and you will die alone.
And the herd benefits the individual as well. It's like they're missing half the equation.
Yes. I mean, just what's going to happen when you encounter yet another pediatrician that won't see your children because you refuse to vaccinate them, because they're legally they can do that.
Mm-hmm.
They can say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to treat your child because I don't want to infect the newborns coming through here. They can do that. I just,
Yeah. Yes, my daughter made my wife and I go out and get our vaccines updated before we were allowed to see our brand new grandbaby. So, and I said, yeah, that's a good idea. We'll go out and get our shots right away.
I mean, fair enough. It's just, and I think that's certainly fair as well. And also, if the baby were to actually become infected and you weren't updated on your boosters, you could still get sick as well. I mean, so it's like reciprocity there. It works.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. So let's see. I have some more questions if you're keen on that.
I am ready.
Okay, let's see. Sociology, history, and engineering, etc., are not really science. So you can't do science in anything that's outside of hard science, I guess.
That's not a question. That's an assertion.
That's an assertion. So yeah, it's more like I meant another misconception.
But okay, just to select one of those for example, sociology is definitely a science. They're doing all the statistics. They're doing analysis on complex phenomena. The fact that human behavior in large groups is not reducible to simple rules doesn't mean it's not science.
Right.
Yeah, sociologists don't come into this saying, "Oh, I'm just going to go by my feelings and do what I." No, it's all about collecting data and
Yes.
analyzing data. So I don't know what was this person trying to say with this statement?
I had posted out, I said, if anybody has any misconceptions about science that they've
Oh,
heard, let me know and we'll discuss it on the show. So that
okay,
was a misconception. So
okay,
I
good.
worded that incorrectly for you.
Yeah.
So
Oh no,
I
that's
apologize.
okay. So that's good. So I don't have to slap that person.
We can force slap whoever came up with that idea. We'll just use our
No,
chokehold.
they appreciated that it is a misconception. It definitely
Yeah,
is.
it is a misconception. Um, so, uh, So essentially, it's just, and and this isn't like a common knowledge, but I've done educational research. So that was my first master's, was a master's of arts and teaching, specialized in secondary science education, and my project was to link content interest to content mastery, and I based it on historical test scores with students who had performed how they performed historically throughout their entire lives in science, and then I asked them, do you like this stuff? But I had very well formulated surveys, and so I went through and I managed to find a way to quantify content interest with content mastery. And so I was going through, so even the students who customarily enjoyed science and did well, if they didn't like a particular subject, they didn't perform as well as you would expect. And
Mhm.
so it was like a consistent pattern. And you were like, well, that's just common freaking sense. But yeah, but to sit there and put it in number form to show
Right.
the trends and the patterns and say this is what it was. And so what I had to do to engage them was to take into consideration Lubinsky's personality types. So I diversified my instruction and diversified their assignments based on personality types to encourage engagement, to see if I could get them to enjoy it, to allow them to pick what they wanted to do. I'm like, okay, do you want to do genetics as Harry Potter? Great. Y'all going to go and do dragon squares. You want to be an actual geneticist dealing with a real world problem? Great. Here's your real world problem. So it was like that seemed to be effective for that particular age group. But that was the question, had my question, went through the process, had to defend my research, all the stuff just like that. Now it's not sitting here doing like my nanoparticle tech or my LPA2 receptor research, computational chemistry, two completely different things, but it was still there. It was still quantified. It was still documented. All the stuff was still there. So it's like, yeah, that
Yeah.
makes me nuts.
And working on human minds is much more complicated than working on nanoparticles. So if we're going to judge science by how difficult it is, then then things like sociology are near the top of the heap as far as complexity goes. So
I mean,
yeah,
exactly. So it's just, and then you have to deal with the people that just hated me. Like, I'm just going to hate everything. I'm just going to say I hate everything and screw up a research. Then you have those people. They suck, by the way.
right. Yeah, but we also have professional organizations. I mean, I'm a member of the National Association of Biology Teachers, the National Science Teachers Association. There are all these groups that are, being very formal and very data driven about how to better teach science. And yeah, teaching can be a science too.
It can be, and the problem we're running into, particularly having come out of the public school system, we're testing our students to death. We're measuring our teachers based on test scores, not so much on engagement, and then you get, God, I was a high school teacher a couple of years ago, and the rubric on what we had to do, it's impossible. It's
Right.
practically impossible and exhausting.
Yes. Yeah, we just my university was just reviewed by the accreditation agency, so we've been through this, and there was a huge emphasis on assessment, and so we've for instance been going through all of our classes now, and we're looking at them. We're saying, okay, what exactly are we teaching these students in this class? And we have to make up these lists, and a lot of it, I feel like, well, this is kind of pointless make work. On the other hand, it's really good to review what you've been doing and see if you can improve it. And so we've been doing a bit of that.
I think, and that's, and I hate to say it, but when I was working on my master's in education, and I'm in science education, and they tell you all these things. This is what the studies say. This is what you're supposed to do, what the current research is, like practices. And that's important to keep up to date with. But when you get into a classroom and you have a huge diverse group of students from all kinds of different backgrounds, there's just a lot of that research. It just takes getting in there, getting your hands dirty, seeing what works when you have such a diverse crowd that you're trying to teach, who you're trying to teach. But it's really important to do self-reflection. So I have returned to academia, but I'm actively asking my students, did this help you?
Right.
Yes. And you're not going to hurt my feelings if you're like, I don't understand anything you're saying.
Yeah, and then there's also the business of looking at past performance. I mean, I'm making some changes to my genetics course this year, for instance, because I know that, like, the last time I taught it, you get students who kind of failed to get the concept in the first month of the class, and then it's all downhill from there. And so I've been doing this major re-emphasis of, okay, let's make sure everyone's 100% on board with the basics. And I'm not going to talk about the complicated stuff until I'm pretty sure that everybody knows the simple stuff. And that's all a product of looking at past test scores, looking at past performance, looking at students who succeeded and those who failed, and trying to figure out what was the difference and what can I do to correct that.
One of the things, having taught college chemistry, I have spent a lot of time on periodicity, a lot of time on how to frickin' read the periodic table. What do the trends? What are the trends about? What are the families about? How do these particular groups act? How do they act with each other? What would you expect them to do if they were to, like, get together? How many, so just like a solid month on this is the periodic table. This is the trends. This is the atomic size. This is what alkali metals do. This is what halogens do. And just pound that in their head, because in my mind, and for a lot of what I've seen with my students, is if they don't understand what the families are, what they do, how they interact with each other, it doesn't matter if I even get to, polyatomic ions. They're not going to have any freaking clue if they don't know that metals and nonmetals always form salts. That's always an ionic compound. What is always going to be an ionic compound? These things right here. So before we even get to freaking bonding and molecular structures and all of that, they have to know how to freaking read the periodic table. I mean, it's just a month of that, probably. That and SI units, conversions, and algebra. Lots of that for the first month.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I also teach cell biology, and we ended up revising that one too, because we had to go through unit conversions and elementary chemistry in the first couple of weeks, the first couple of labs. That's all we did was remind them, here's how you calculate concentrations and volumes, and here's molarity, and here,
That's towards the end of the first semester of chemistry is molality, molarity. You end with the ideal gas law, but I would start introducing how the variables interact with each other at states of matter. I'm like, okay, but I actively would use simulations in my classroom as well, like the Colorado, phet.colorado.edu, fantastic website, has all kinds of math stuff on there, chemistry, biology, interactive simulations, and they actually give you real numbers. So if you're to do the ideal gas law, and I say, okay, let's say that this container is a liter, you could calculate how many moles of this compound is in here just by reading the temperature, the pressure, and all of this. Let's plug in the numbers. But you can also see how they interact with each other actively while you're playing with it. So it's like I start introducing all of these variables before we ever get to the math and how they interact with each other. And then once they know that, then you can go, okay, multiplying together means they have an inverse relationship, right? Inversely proportional and proportional. Yeah. And so once you start getting into that, then you can throw the math at them. But the conversions, I do dimensional analysis with all that. Yeah.
Yeah, but that leads into another thing too, is that, we have curricula, and courses don't just stand alone. That, for instance, my cell biology course has a prerequisite of having taken the general chemistry and the stuff that you were just talking about.
Yes.
And that's why we do it at the beginning, is we say, okay, here's the stuff you should have learned last year. Let's do a quick rehash. Make sure you haven't forgotten it, because we need to build on that to go on.
Right. They often forget stuff like that. And so it's weird, but then, the math fear is a thing and the science fear is a thing, and trying to overcome that. They're like, oh, this is too hard for me. I can't do this. Yes, you can. It might take a bit more work than what you're used to, and you might have to study a little bit differently, but you can do this.
Yes. And it's, it would sure be easy on us if we could just say, well, then obviously if you don't know your math, you are not cut out to be a scientist. Goodbye. But that's not what we get to do as teachers. Our whole job is, you want to know this other stuff, but you don't know this stuff here. Well, we got to teach you this real quick and get you off the ground with it.
And even if you don't have a lot of the time in class to do that, there are so many resources available that you can just say, hey, go watch a couple of these videos from Khan Academy. Here's some worksheets. Come to office hours, just sit down, work through some of these, kind of get a little bit of that. It's just, but I think a lot of students are just scared. They're just scared to come to their professor and say, I wasn't. I actually had a standing appointment with my organic chemistry teacher. He made me so mad. He was one of the worst teachers I ever had. I had to retake the class. So he wouldn't explain his own homework he assigned. So I would go, I had a standing weekly appointment with him. And even if I didn't need him, I'd go anyway, because he just pissed me off so much. And I would sit there. I'm like, can you explain this homework problem? You don't need to know that for the test. I'm like, but I need to know it to complete the homework, which you're grading. So explain this to me. It was really fun to be back in that department for my master's. To see
Oh, yeah, no, I was lucky. I didn't have any teachers like that. So, I would have been so furious if I did.
Oh my goodness. You're up for one, maybe, I think we have time for maybe one more misconception.
Okay, fire away.
Let me see. I think I got one. I think this was a good one. How about the common misconception that the word science, and this comes from Victor. How about the common misconception that the word science refers to a specific set of facts or theories rather than the process by which we obtain knowledge in the world?
Okay, that's a good one to bring up.
Yeah.
I mentioned I'm teaching introductory biology this term, and that's the first thing I talked about, was that, you got to realize that science is a process. I actually badmouthed our textbook.
I've done that too.
It's one of those introductory classes where the textbook, which is dictated by the discipline as a whole, is this massive tome. We're actually using, which one? We're using Campbell's biology, which is, this thick. It's gigantic, and it's
Oh, I think I have two. I think I have two different Campbell biology books.
it's a very popular book, and it's a good book. It's a gigantic reference book.
Yeah.
And that's not how we think about science. This is the book you would rush to and thumb through if you need to look up some detail on something. But we're trying to teach students how to approach science in a reasonable way. And that's all about doing experiments and making observations and generating hypotheses and coming up with valid tests of your hypothesis. And I'm sorry, that book does not help at all.
No, it doesn't.
And mainly, it seems to be a tool of intimidation. That okay, students come in, they have to pay $180 or something for this giant book.
Yeah.
And
That they'll use for maybe 2 classes if this is their only time they're going to be around biology.
yes, and I tell them, okay, you got this. You're stuck with this book for this class. Don't sell it off at the end of the semester. Just hang on to it. It's like owning a dictionary. You got a snapshot of biology in 2000. Well, it's probably more like 2000 rather than 2020, but that's close enough. And it'll be kind of useful. I've still got some of my textbooks from when I was an undergraduate, which was in the 1970s. And they're sometimes useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have different chemistry books. I have different biology books. I still have my genetics book. I have my human genetics book. And it's when I was teaching high school biology 2, we didn't have a textbook. And so I just pulled all of my undergrad books and I'm like, this is relevant information. I would sit there like, there was a whole section of the cell biology book. I forget the author, but they had like little sections within chapters that would cover specific topics. So there was a little bit of a little bit of chemistry in there where they talked about the biological macromolecules. They talked about pH and water and skeletal structure of carbon. And I'm like, this is the first 9 weeks right here. These little and I had like 6 Bio 2 students. So I copied, photocopied, stapled it. And I'm like, okay.
I think it's a good idea. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this is awesome. I'm hearing a little bit of feedback.
I am too. I didn't touch anything.
You didn't touch anything.
No.
That's okay.
So we're just going to say everything twice. It'll be great.
Yeah. It's like the Grand Canyon, which was made in like a less than 1,000 years. Wasn't that it? According to the elders.
Oh yeah. If we're talking about misconceptions, let's dig into the creationism because that's all nonsense.
Oh my goodness. Let me see if I can get this sound fixed.
Okay. I'm still an echo.
Well, we only have about 7 minutes left. It's okay.
Okay.
I don't know where that is. It was just sudden.
Uh-huh.
I almost need to like say something and go over.
Yeah, this is Melody and PZ coming at you from outer space. And get the nice little exhale there, yeah.
Oh my goodness. All right. So, but yes, the thing with science being this idea of a book of facts and not an actual process of thought or problem solving is crap.
I'm afraid to say yes now because really.
The reverberation. I wonder if it's coming out on the live stream. Can you guys hear any feedback, or is it just us? The actual show. Let me see. No, I don't hear it on there, so it seems fine.
Oh,
It's just on
okay.
our end.
We'll just pretend it doesn't exist then.
It's all right. It must not be real. It's magic. Oh, goodness. Well, since we're coming up on the end, why don't you tell people where they can find you? I've put links to your website and your Twitter
Uh-huh.
in the description. So,
Well,
why-
you can just come out to Morris, Minnesota, and you'll find me there. In all the snowy glory that we have here. It's, yeah. Uh, don't make the trip. You can find me on freethoughtblogs.com along with a bunch of other people. I recently quit Facebook, so you won't find me there. I've got Instagram. We've now got a Free Thought Blogs Discord server.
ah,
There's a couple places you can find me.
everything you just said sounds really important because I heard it twice, like an echo. Terribly
now,
important things.
yes, it is. Not. Oh wait, no, it's not echoing.
No echoing.
What did you do?
I used the force, Peasy.
Oh, very good. Okay.
The force is known as Zoe. She's the person who runs this show for me. So that's my cover.
Okay. Well, the short answer is go to freethoughtblogs.com. I'm on the blog Feringula there. And on the sidebar, there's a long list of various places you can contact me.
Awesome. And that link is in the description as well as your Twitter. So, all right. Any last thoughts on science misconceptions? What's the thing that really gets your goat?
Are we going to talk for another hour? I would say the number one thing that gets my goat is the attempt to impose meaning and purpose on evolution.
Ah, yeah.
It leads to so many dead ends and wrong turnings and bad ideas, and it just doesn't work. There's no evidence of it at all in the science.
Yeah, it's just a thing that happens when you do stuff and there's factors and variables around. It's kind of like a meaning and purpose behind baking a cake other than you just putting it on there. I mean, you add the heat, it's going to bake. If you don't want to make the cake, it's still going to cook unless it's like cause and effect. Doesn't have any meaning or purpose, particularly if a thing happens every single time.
Right. And it's like the baking powder does not have some goal it is trying to accomplish in the cake. It has a physical reaction, and that's what you're taking advantage of. And yeah, it's the same with people. We're just little meat machines doing our thing.
Yep. And the thing is a lot of it is predictable. How a lot of it you can always expect certain things to happen every single time. That's where we have like facts that are associated with laws. But we take all of the different facts and the laws to generate an explanation of things. That's the theory. You're like, it's just a theory. That makes me nuts. I could go on.
Oh, yeah.
For a long time about it's just a theory. I'm like, I'm going to force choke the next person. Do that to me. Be like, do you feel that?
You didn't tell me what a violent show this is with all the force choking and.
I have a lightsaber behind me, but it's plastic. So it's right here. So I mean,
you're not going to cut any Sith in half with a plastic lightsaber.
Yeah,
So.
no. I mean, I can even hold it, dude, like for real.
Okay.
I think this is Mace Windu's. I can't remember it. And see, it won't even close right. I'm not, I mean, I could go. Yeah, but that's it. Sometimes I bring up different geeky stuff to help explain a concept or not.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have absolutely nothing geeky behind me.
It looks like you got, is that a neuron behind you?
The big pink thing?
Yeah.
No, that's an octopus.
That's an octopus. It looked like it was
it's
like
wearing a science hat.
I see. That is a geeky thing.
No, it's not. That's perfectly normal. Everyone has one of those.
I can't speak at all. You've seen all the stuff behind me, so it's I got a lot of crap here, so I can't say anything. No judgment. Well, thank you for being on the show, Peasy. I hope you'll come back again soon.
Anytime. Feel free to ask. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. It's been good talking to everybody.
Yeah. And please check him out on Twitter, and I will see you guys next week. I don't remember what I'm doing. I'll sort it out. I think next week we have Fossil Locator on, who locates fossils, and we're going to talk about misconceptions associated with fossils. Would that be fun?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see you guys next time.
Okay. So long.
Bye.